Defence Secretary James Mattis has rebuked him over his threat to use troops to quell the protests against racial injustice in America. His comments come after all four officers involved in the death of George Floyd, the event which started the protests, were formally charged. Derek Chauvin, the officer who was filmed kneeling on Mr. Floyd's neck, has had his charge elevated from third to second-degree murder. Under Minnesota state law, first-degree murder is defined as when the defendant has the intention to kill and usually requires some element of premeditation. Second-degree murder, the charges being brought here, requires an intention to kill, or in this case, intention to commit a serious crime which results in death. And third-degree murder would not require proof that the defendant wanted the victim to die, only that their actions were dangerous and carried out without regard to human life. Our North America correspondent David Willis has more.
Huge protests continue to grip this country in response to George Floyd's death. Thousands converged on downtown Los Angeles, and after violence here over the weekend, this time their call for change was peaceful. Nighttime curfews remain in place here, as well as in New York and Washington, D.C.
We got all four!
In Minneapolis, where all this began, anger gave way to cheers at the news that former police officer Derek Chauvin is to face a more serious murder charge.
I hear y'all say we got all four! We got
And at the news that the three other officers involved in Mr. Floyd's death have now been arrested. They stand accused of aiding and abetting his murder. President Trump's often bellicose response to the recent unrest here has unnerved even some in his own party. And now his former Defence Secretary James Mattis is voicing concern. In a withering critique in The Atlantic magazine, Mr. Mattis accuses the president of an abuse of power and writes, "Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us." Donald Trump responded promptly. "Probably the only thing Barack Obama and I have in common," he tweeted, "is that we both had the honour of firing James Mattis, the world's most overrated general."
I see limitless potential that deserves to flourish and thrive, and you should be able to learn and make mistakes and live a life of joy.
America's first black president struck a starkly different and more optimistic tone to that of President Trump in a virtual town hall event.
As tragic as these past few weeks have been, as difficult and scary and uncertain as they've been, they've also been an incredible opportunity for people to be awakened.
Right now, I think the nation needs law and order because you have a bad group of people out there, and they're using George Floyd, and they're using a lot of other people to try and do some bad things. And what we do, we have it totally under control.
George Floyd's family and friends are due to gather in Minneapolis on Thursday for a memorial service in his honour. The calls for a radical reform of race relations in this country are growing. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
Demonstrations have taken place around the world in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter protests in the US. Rich Preston has been looking at the global picture over the last 24 hours.
Thousands gathered in London's Hyde Park on Wednesday to show their support for the Black Lives Matter movement and calling for justice for George Floyd. Before marching towards Westminster and gathering outside the Houses of Parliament. It was an image mirrored across Europe, here in Finland, where thousands chanted George Floyd's last words and sending their message to the US.
The way that everyone showed up today, and especially in a homogenous white country such as Finland, it's sending a big message that a lot more people than just black people are tired.
Protesters in Denmark took to one knee as a symbol of support, condemning racism and calling for justice to be done. In central Germany, protesters in Frankfurt decrying racism of all kinds.
The difference is that there it was recorded, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen here, and that it isn't bad here, and it has to stop. It's vital to stand up against it, not just here in Germany, but all over the world.
The most that we can do here is show solidarity with the people over there, and to go out on the streets and show them that they're not alone.
Crowds in the Greek capital Athens marched towards the US embassy. But the demonstration turned violent. Protesters threw stones at police, who responded with tear gas. And in Cape Town, South Africa, where legalised discrimination in the form of apartheid is, for many, within living memory. Messages of unity and solidarity.
I think it's really important to show some kind of support and for all of us to stand against something that we know is not right.
What started out as a seemingly innocuous call to police in Minneapolis just over a week ago resulted in the death of a man, sparking an outpouring of emotion and a civil uprising. Not just in the city where it happened, but around the world. Rich Preston, BBC News.